What up, everybody? This week, we got Gina from DeepDiveLife in the house. We got Kelly Walker coming on, a guy who's been fighting on the front lines for freedom from overreaching governmental tyranny against COVID. Whole 9 yards. Stick around. We're talking parenting and more, bro. Yeah! I feel like the most likely thing is that the left is going to keep pushing, and then it will be like, all right, if you're going to try to take this right, we're going to have to stand up now. We're just going to have to go ahead and do this, guys. And then everybody stands up together and says no further. And then whatever, there's too many of us to arrest. Like, you can't just say that we have to hand our kids over to the government and allow them to be told about things that our religion calls sinful. You know what I mean? Like, somewhere along the lines, I'm going to be like, no, you're not taking my kids, and then like maybe that's the line where every parent's like, okay, well, I guess we'll have to go in this together.
I think so. I think because I think that's like just the final straw for some people, because I know damn well you're not coming through my door. Like, you want my kids, you're not coming through my door.
100%.
And I think there's so many people who are like, that's the hill I will absolutely die on.
Yeah. They're so dumb to have gone after the kids like they did so fast. Man,
hard and fast. It just was like just straight into it.
Right. I think they need the destabilization to occur in order for them to be able to achieve what they're trying to achieve, but they were just dumb I think Trump screwed up their plan, man. And I said this in the last episode of the show, but I really think he butchered it for them. He made them all do things 3 or 4 or 5 times faster because he disrupted the natural flow in which they were doing it. And so now they're having to do things at breakneck speed. And it's so obvious to people who aren't even political. Mm-hmm. They're just like, wait, okay, why is Papa John's having a Pride Day? This is weird. You know what I mean? Like, why is everybody having a Pride Day? And then Target happens, and then you start to have opinions that you didn't think you had. All these people that are on the fence, now they're going, well, I'm not really on the fence. Like, if you really want to know, like, but you're not going to say boys aren't boys and girls aren't girls. I didn't want to talk about this. I didn't want to get off the couch, but they're making them get off the couch with constantly putting this crap in their face. But they don't care. A lot of the companies, anyway, that are taking the hit from it financially, Target, Bud Light, whatever. Bud Light re-sponsored the Pride Festival, or whatever. So they don't care. They don't care what everybody thought or whatever. They're just in it for the money or some other reason. They're in it for the credits from the ESG system that the World Bank is essentially saying you have to have in order to participate, or whatever the World Economic Forum thing is. If you don't know what I'm talking about, everybody, look up what happened to Sri Lanka in order for them to be able to get loans for their country this last year. They had to submit to the new regulations in order for them to be essentially moral, according to climate change moralists, meaning like you need to cut down significantly on the emissions that you're going to be putting out. And one of the primary things they made them put out was nitrogen. They weren't allowed to use nitrogen. So they had to decrease their nitrogen use, which is almost in every fertilizer, I suppose, that's good. I don't know anything about this. I just remember reading about this. And so Sri Lanka was like, fine, if we have to cut our nitrogen intake in order for us to get loans from the World Bank in a way for us to continue doing life in the whole country not collapsing, fine, to save the country from collapsing, we'll do this nitrogen cut. So they did it, and then none of the plants grew at the rate they were supposed to, and now they're starving. And so the whole thing's in a collapse. And so this is like a massive proof of concept for what the ESG stuff is about and what it does to countries that actually adopt it. Environmental, social governance, you know what I mean? Right. And so they're essentially, so all these companies are like, I want to be able to participate in the global economy as the globalists are describing what the future will be like. So I have to do these certain weird things. And one of those things, instead of environmental social governance or whatever, it's something else called CRI or CEI or something like that. And it's about equity and inclusion and something else. And so they have to display these acts of, I guess you should say, attrition. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they have to show they're on that person's side. They agree with them financially, and business aligns with them, whether they want it or not.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. What's going on, Kelly?
Hey, good to see you, Ross.
This is Gina Engman. She runs DeepDiveLife account on Instagram. She's got over 100,000 followers on there, so she's a pretty badass mama over here. This is Kelly Walker. He's a freedom fighter fighting on the front lines, connected with a lot of people like Carrie Lake and other people like that, and he's working alongside you. You worked a lot in the election type stuff too. I remember you were talking about it a lot, at least, and getting exposure for it. But the other thing that you're doing is you're working towards this kind of like conquest to bring people together who were crapped on by the government because of their vaccination status or religious liberties or whatever it is. And you've got one hell of a story to kind of talk about here. So Kelly, welcome to the show, man. Good to have you.
Thank you. And nice to see you, Gina.
Nice to see
I'll
you.
have to catch your show. Yeah, I've definitely been involved in since the government basically took a crap on us and targeted our business. And, I was one of the first people after these lockdowns happened to really make a stand. So, I say the past 3 years, I've really been standing up for people who've been squashed by the government and continuing to be persecuted by the government. So it's been a long journey, Ross. I know you know some of that.
Well, yeah. So why don't you talk a little bit about that so that people just get a glimpse? Like, so essentially, like, Kelly was put into a position where he was going to have his coffee shop running at a certain pace, and then the government, I guess, was it the city ordinance, or like what was the thing that came out that claimed some businesses were legit and some businesses weren't, Kelly?
Yeah, it was Pima County, Arizona, in the Tucson area. They took a really hard stance on COVID as a means of controlling people. And our coffee shop, nobody knew exactly what was going on when we got those 2 weeks to slow the spread. Although I was working at the time as editor-in-chief for a national medical publication. So I knew more than most people what was going on. I knew about this virus before it even hit the public. But we were running our coffee shop. They came out with a county declaration on COVID. We met all of their regulations, even though I knew some of them were actually quite wrong. But we wanted to make people feel comfortable in our little coffee shop. So we got our first COVID inspection. We passed it. They gave us a sticker that said "Ready for you," and everything seemed fine. Then suddenly we start getting negative reviews, nasty comments, death threats to kill my family, phone calls to our baristas. One 18-year-old barista got a call and somebody called her an effing cunt. Wow. And we thought, well, what's going on here? Why is this happening? And people started sending us messages. Hey, did you know you were on the county wall of shame? Turns out that Pima County was putting on their website publicly businesses that were supposedly out of compliance. So I emailed the county board of supervisors and I said, hey, you've made a mistake. Here's our past inspection, our results where we passed. And they said basically, oh, well, it's going to take 2 weeks to take it down. I said, wait a minute. That was the health department getting back to us. I said, no, you don't understand. People are threatening to kill my children. We can't even let our children play out front. So they ignore me. And then at the time, there were 5 county supervisors, 2 were Republican. It's down to 1 now. But
God, this is so far above, there's so many things wrong with it that my brain is going, what? No, all this is wrong. Number one, who the hell are you to tell me that I can't open a business when the hell I want? And if you're going to try to publicly shame me, bro, without the proof, and you probably know more than they did about the freaking virus anyway, dude.
I did.
My God, there's so much about this that pisses me off. Keep going. Sorry.
Yeah, I have a master's degree in science, and I studied extensively biology, chemistry. I was more environmental science, conservation scientist, but the principles are still the same. Plus, I was writing about this professionally, researching direct sources. So anyway, one of the Republican supervisors invited me to a meeting. He said, there's a public comment period. You have 3 minutes to speak, and I'm cutting details out. But they had been doing virtual meetings up until then, and so we went up to the elevator to go to his office and do the meeting from there. But they said, oh no, they're doing it in person. And by the way, from after this meeting on, they did virtual meetings. So it was really a setup. They wanted to get me down in there. And it came my turn to talk. And by the way, I'd sent a script of what I was going to say. I started just reading comments that had been posted on our social media that my wife woke up in the morning and saw that were just, expletives not deleted. I figured, we have to see that because the county subjected us to this, so they'll see it. And, there's a whole video, I know you've seen it, Ross, where the head of the board of supervisors said, "Mr. Walker, you'll watch your language." And I said, "Well, okay, I'll censor it if you want, but you need to hear this." And within 30 seconds of starting to speak, they had 3 sheriff's officers surrounding me. They yanked my arms behind me when I let them, uh, and handcuffed me and took me down and booked me for disorderly conduct. I mean, it was unbelievable. I'd never been arrested, didn't have any record, and I'm working with some Chinese dissidents who left China because of the Chinese Communist Party, who've been through all kinds of things, and some of them watched that video and they said, "This happened in the U.S." I said, "Yeah, it did, right here."
Wow.
I mean, it's communist level stuff.
So you guys have to be abused, but they won't allow you to share your abuse.
Well, it's like that father in Loudoun County, that went up to speak when his daughter was raped by the trans person in the school, and they arrested the father at the school board meeting because he was angry that his daughter was raped at that school. Yeah. And it's like, this is bonkers. You know what I mean? And it's like, I have a lot of respect for police officers. I do, because we need them. Okay. Period. But upon the condition that you actually honor the Constitution. As soon as you step out of it and you're an enforcement tyrant for the state in order to deprive me of my property, my freedom, or my travel, or whatever the thing is, that it seems like is 90% of the interactions that we have now with current police officers, I just think it's become a racket, man. And I'm like, there's a matter of time before it's just like, dude, like I see a lot of these people called First Amendment auditors, and I actually like watching their videos because what they'll do is they'll know the law better than the police officers do, right? Like let's say I just went down to like somewhere near federal lands, right? And I was just recording like a federal jail or whatever from the public street. Well, that looks a little suspicious, right? So police will come up to you and they'll go, "Hey, we need to see some ID and see who you are. You're just out here doing something suspicious." Well, in order for police officers in most states to be able to demand ID from you, saying like, you have to lawfully give it to me, you have to have reasonable, articulable suspicion that the person is committing a crime, is about to commit a crime, or has committed a crime. If you don't have that, you're not allowed to detain people and demand ID from them, right? And so even in most cases, speaking with vulgar language and stuff like that is not usually something that qualifies, because even if a city ordinance or something says you can't use profound language or whatever language, that doesn't trump the Constitution. So there's a hierarchy of how it works. But so what police officers do is they enforce something that's not law, like often, and which is what they did in Kelly's case, where they're putting his hands behind his back saying, "Hey, we got to take you out of here." And so essentially what they're doing is they're acting under color of law, but they're doing it in a way that violates civil rights, which is what's supposed to make you lose, if you're an officer, your qualified immunity. Your qualified immunity is what you get as an officer because you're acting as a blind, impartial person trying to do the law and abide by the Constitution. But if a citizen tells you, "You are violating my rights and here's how, you have to stop," and they continue to do it, then they lose their qualified immunity and they're screwed. So the justice system can actually land on them. I don't know how often it actually does, but these First Amendment auditors will go into postal the post offices and stuff like that, and they'll be like, "Get out of here, we want y'all filming in here." But that's public property. The post office is ours, so you can't tell me I'm not allowed to film in public. You know what I mean? And the police will come up and they'll try to kick them out and say you're trespass, and you just learn how much the police really bend the rules that doesn't really hold up. And you notice the same thing with Democrats. They ask forgiveness, not permission. The same thing happens with these tyrannical police officers and these COVID states and these school boards. Everybody is asking forgiveness, not permission. And it's time the conservative party started thinking the same way and going, "Hey, we're done with this stuff, man. Let's they're cheating and we're playing by the rules."
Yep. And the story gets better. I was arrested again just under a year later. But I'll tell you one thing, after that first arrest, we had lines out the door of the coffee shop. I mean, people coming from other states saying, "Wow, nobody stood up to this." And I got everybody's stories, and they were saying, "Oh, finally somebody stood up." But we had law enforcement officials from every agency you can imagine, including the sheriff's department, which is the one that arrested me. And one of the sheriff's officers said, "Man, we all know that's bogus. I would have quit my job before I made that arrest." In fact, going back a little bit, when I was being booked, this officer who handcuffed me, I said, "Look, I respect the police, but And he said, well, I don't want to lose my, and I said, why'd you do that? He said, well, I don't want to lose my job. I said, your job is to protect people like me from people like that. And you swore an oath to the Constitution. And I chewed out every officer I could. I mean, respectfully, but I'm sitting there in handcuffs for speaking, and not only for speaking, but for saying, hey, you've put us in danger. This is a time when on the news you were seeing violence in the streets over this kind of thing. We thought, somebody could come by and smash our plate glass windows and burn our business. So, and he knew, he even said, oh man, when I get home, my wife's going to kill me, because his wife was conservative.
Who is this guy?
He was the officer that handcuffed me. I'm trying to remember his name.
The guy on the left that grabbed you first?
The bald one that says, you are resisting.
Oh, okay.
The one that actually handcuffed me. So he said, I said, you're violating my civil rights. And he said, you're resisting, because I was holding onto the speaking stand and I wasn't letting him pull my arm back, because I knew I had a right to be there. I'm like, he said, you're resisting. I said, I'm not resisting. I'm just strong.
Right.
And you're going to get a lawsuit. You're going to hear from lawyers. And, I came in there under the proposition that people in government that are elected, especially, they work for us. We don't work for them.
Right.
And this guy acted like a little king, wave of his hand to take him away. And
yeah, sergeant at arms, get him out of here.
Yeah. Unfortunately, too many police officers have acted like security guards. And then, from that point, I was targeted. There was like a black mark on my name. We found out later that the sheriff's department, under that corrupt sheriff, was monitoring my social media, was monitoring the social media of an ER doc who came in to give a talk about masks. And it was this just dystopian Nazi-like environment. I mean, we had people
brown shirts
driving around our shop, filming us, coming into the shop. Pima County had the system where anybody could report someone for mask violations, and then the health department would come trotting out. And so it was.
This is so crazy. This can never happen again. Oh my God, these tyrants need to be kept in check so flipping bad. These losers, they're the hall monitors of the world that never had friends somewhere else, and so they're just doing their job, bro.
And none of it's law. They don't even know their own regulations, Ross, because the very title of the county declaration said, rules and regulations, whatever, if 6-foot spacing can't be maintained. So when it has that condition in the title, if you can maintain the spacing, it's all null and void. It's a condition. So they didn't even know their own procedures. It wasn't law. And so this started bleeding into the schools, because kids were being forced to wear masks. They were talking about requiring vaccinations, and people started coming to our shop saying, hey, our kids are being kept home, and there was no reason for it, because COVID, influenza was more deadly to kids than COVID. And we knew this. We'd known all this for some time, but people were coming in and saying our children are suffering depression. We had some Freedom Talk events at the coffee shop. My son gets migraines, my 8-year-old son, every time he wears a mask. One boy was put on suicide watch because of these policies, and the teen suicide and child suicide rate skyrocketed. And some of these students, before they killed themselves, said it was because of the isolation, the forced masking, losing their identity. So I was talking to the Vail School District about this, reporting this, sending them these videos, and they didn't give a damn. And I found out they're actually getting money by enforcing these CDC, like millions of dollars for enforcing the masking and the CDC regulations. So they put money over kids. They had blood on their hands.
And lots of different places did that, man. And that's just something, God, it's so quick how fast it happened and how easy it seemed to have happened. It's just, it's so frustrating to watch that. That's why I tell everybody, man, you've got to learn your constitutional rights, and you've got to be good. You've got to be good at quickly explaining what an officer is about to do if he's about to violate your rights. There's a very, so just give you an example. Me and Alex Stein, we were, Alex Stein is Primetime 99, the dude who always does like the funny bits where he goes and he he'll go into different city meetings and be like, I want to swim and you guys won't let me swim. And he's got a big bikini suit on. So me and him went to Washington, D.C. Right.
Nice.
And that was when he told, which I told him not to do, to be clear, I said I did afterwards. I was like, bro, you shouldn't have said that, because he said that AOC was his favorite big booty Latina. That's when he made that whole joke, and it was like it went viral. And I was like, bro, you shouldn't have said that. AOC put us on her freaking Twitter and was like, or her Instagram, and she was like, have you ever been harassed by men? And like, there I am. Like, I'm like, dude, I did not say a word to you. Alex said a word, and I told him not to say something like that. But anyway, he did anyway. It was funny and it went viral. He got what he wanted.
Not a Bud Light, just so you know.
Not a Bud Light.
Never.
Well, so the police, though, at the order of AOC, came down and detained him. So
because he said that she had a big booty?
Yeah, he said, this is my favorite big booty Latina. She even got a picture with him, I think, and if I remember correctly. But so anyway, here's the whole point. The whole point was the police said, hey, we need your ID, right? They walked up and said, hey, we need your ID. Not, hey, you're not required by law to give this to me, but somebody was a little threatened by you, and we like to tell her that there's nothing to worry about. We'd like to go run you through our database and make sure that you're not a felon or something like that. Can we, would you be okay with that? That's the appropriate thing that police should have said to not violate your rights. But what they traditionally do is they go, hey, I need to see some ID, right? And then they try to justify their fake detainment until they can find something. That's already outside of the scope of what's constitutionally appropriate. Well, so I knew this, and I walked up. Oh yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, so I knew this, and the police were, he had given them his ID because he didn't know that you're allowed to resist him. And I was like, so I walked up and I was like, hey, is he being detained? And they were like, well, no. I was like, take your ID back, Alex. I was like, you don't have to give them shit. You know what I mean? Like, we're not going to help you. The freaking Capitol Police, bro, the people who helped the obvious crap that happened on the 6th. You know what I mean? Like, what in the world? So anyway, all that to say, know your rights. Well, keep going, Kelly. So what's everybody doing that's been in this boat? We got tons of people that have had this crap happen to them. Luckily I didn't have anything happen to me because I own my own businesses and stuff like that. And I didn't have a public facing facility. But so what are you doing, and how's that going, and who else is doing it with you?
Well, after I stood up to that first arrest, and maybe unfortunately for them or for my family, I don't know, but I don't get intimidated, and I don't back down, particularly when my family's threatened or people I care about, or in this case, my staff as well. So people started coming to the shop. It was seen as an oasis of sanity. And that's where Freedom Talk was born. I decided, we need to regain our country. We need to have people understand the roots of their rights, and like things that you're saying too. What are your rights? So we started holding Freedom Talk events, and we had a behind the mask symposium with 3 of us who'd been in the health field. And I mean, the shop was packed. We had people out onto the patio. People were hungry for all of this, and they felt like they had a place to go where they could get some help. So when the mandates came down on the police officers, the firefighters, the people, the medical people, the nurses and doctors, they all, they all congregated in our shop. And here I was, for all they knew, a coffee shop owner, although I've had other backgrounds, scientific and marketing and broadcasting. But they came to me looking for answers, and, hey, we've got this issue. Can you help? So what do you do when people come to you for help? What do you do when people are coming to you saying, our kids are committing suicide? When in your own neighborhood, just in the desert outside your home, a kid blows his brains out because he cannot tolerate the COVID policies that the schools were enforcing. What do? Do you turn a blind eye, or do you have a responsibility, a moral responsibility to help? I think you have a moral responsibility to help and speak out. But by this time, they had targeted me. Now, we had a Freedom Talk where a whole lot of people showed up, including a candidate for state senate, and we talked about the school issue and what we needed to do. And we had a plan to go to a school board meeting and just basically use those public comment periods and say, look, you're killing our children. COVID isn't killing our children, you are. So over 200 parents, kids, and supporters showed up to one of the school board meetings. A lot of them had something prepared to say. I had a 16 or 17-year-old boy send me his speech and say, what do you think about this? And his speech was about one of his friends who had committed suicide and what he had said to him, and how, we had teenagers saying, you're killing us. You're killing our friends. Well, their response was, this is Vail School District. John Caruth is the superintendent. They shut down the meeting. And some of us had gone in, including this lady who's now in the state Senate, Arizona State Senate. We stood our ground. We said, well, first of all, they didn't want to let us in because we weren't wearing masks. And we said, That's the whole purpose of talking to you, is we don't agree with the masks.
Right.
We believe they're harmful and detrimental. So what they did is they set aside a room with monitors, and there's a picture that went all over the media of me basically going by the guy who was checking people in with his mask. I was literally sliding by saying, "Excuse me," because there was no room. But they said local Kelly Walker barges into meeting, and so they portrayed it as if it was this violent event. And yet they had designated a room for us, so we had every reason to be in there. So we stood our ground and we said, you need to let these people in to talk. They have something important to say. And the dipstick PR gal was just in a tizzy and trying to get everybody out. Well, so we said our piece, and they still weren't letting people in to testify. So finally they started letting people in, and I turned to the people I had gone in with, because we were the first ones in. I said, let's go outside into the parking lot, tell people what's going on, and give these people their moment, because it's their moment, not ours. Because by this time I was somewhat of a local celebrity, and I didn't want it to be about me. So we left, and the story that went viral, I mean, it was all over the conservative news. Bongino, Dinesh D'Souza carried it, was that apparently the school board either fled or hid, and someone who was there swore in a new school board. They said, well, they don't have a quorum. They abandoned their posts, so we're going to swear in new people. I knew that this wasn't going to take. They weren't just going to lie down and take it. But this was right there in Vail, Arizona. It was like the linchpin for this massive movement of parents to go to school board meetings. I think it was happening a little bit before that, but people saw that and they said, wow, you can actually go to a school board meeting and do something. And I was a little worried, because I thought, well, if you think you're going to do it that way, it's probably not going to work. But that's been very, very powerful for parents to go to these school board meetings. And I saw the sheriff's report afterwards, and what happened was Darcy Mentone, the PR coordinator for the school district, had contacted the sheriff's department prior to me even going there and said, Kelly Walker's coming to this meeting, described me and said, he's going there just to get likes and follows, and he wants to get arrested. So they had been profiling me. And a sheriff's lieutenant, who I came to know very well, he said that someone had called his office prior to the meeting and said, I want you to watch out for Kelly Walker. I want you to have your officers basically watch him and watch for him to slip up. And one of the officers said, this isn't the Soviet Union. And instead of doing that, he called his officers and said, you're going to see Kelly Walker. He's a big guy. He's going to be outspoken. He's going to hold his ground, but he's not a threat. So he turned around, and I just applaud them for that. I mean, the way they handled this meeting that was so contentious was they didn't take sides. They were there just to keep the peace, and that's exactly what they were supposed to be doing. They weren't going to act as security guards for the administration and the board.
Right. Well, I think that's the way this shit's supposed to be. Yeah. This is supposed to be, hey, there's 78 people in this little town. We elected you, Gina, and you, Kelly, to be here to talk about what we want to do. You guys are supposed to represent us in this thing. You're not representing us in this thing. You don't get to stand behind plexiglass and then determine who you're going to listen to. Bro, we gave you your authority. Sit your ass down, and we're going to tell you how we feel. And we in America have a right to redress our government in any way we see fit, verbally.
Yes, we do. And instead of listening to these people, and instead of taking seriously the fact that kids were committing suicide and parents were very upset, what did the school board do? What did the staff do? They went out on this PR campaign, started talking to the media, and portrayed this as a hostile, violent crowd. And Arizona's, you don't even need a permit to carry a firearm. A couple guys showed up with it strapped on because they didn't know any better. But, for that matter, there was no signage where the school board meeting took place saying no firearms. But, their purpose wasn't to bring them to threaten anybody, but they contrived this whole thing. And so these parents just got more and more desperate. And we had at one school called Mesquite Elementary, one day a mom came into our coffee shop. She was just weeping. I sat down next to her. All her friends sat around the table. I put my arm around her and said, what's going on? She said, well, my 8-year-old son is in the office. They want to quarantine him. He's refusing to leave because he's protesting this. And I thought, wow, what a brave little guy. So I put out a message on our social media. I said, everybody go to Mesquite and let's protest this. So people showed up with signs, sort of independent media people showed up, and it was a protest. And again, the administration showed up and stood there with arms folded, like they're trying to protect the school or something. Nobody was doing anything but talking. And this is what led to my second arrest, because people were getting more and more desperate because they weren't being listened to, they weren't being heard. And one day I was headed to the coffee shop in the same school, Mesquite Elementary. There was a dad there. He called me from the office. He said, they've quarantined my son. They forced a mask on him. He threw it in the nurse's trash. They made him dig it out of the trash with all the other soiled masks and put it back on. He said, I'm going to call the police because this is child abuse. He said, I want you here to keep me calm. I want you here to witness this. So I won't go into all the details of it, but we just sat and talked, disagreed with them. They said to leave. The dad said, not until I get, I had actually, so let me back up a little bit. He called the Tucson police, and I heard it because he put it on speaker. He said, they're abusing my kid. This is what they did. I want you to come arrest them for child abuse. And the officer on the phone, and we have a recording of this whole thing. It's over an hour. He said, well, you're probably right, but we're not going to come out as too controversial. And by this time I was calling the sheriff's department. I wasn't sure where the jurisdiction was. He said, well, it's not my jurisdiction, but you probably should advise the dad to go. And then I called State Senator Kelly Townsend and asked her advice. She said, yeah, I think you should go, but make sure, tell the father first to get documentation of why they were quarantining his child. So his response, we want you to leave, it was, I'll leave as soon as you give me documentation. So we were going on good advice. And he got the documentation, we left. Well, they went out again to the press, depicted us as some violent extremists. Their story, and the story that's still out in the media, is that 3 large men rushed to school, attempted to arrest and zip tie a principal. The police were called and they fled. Well, none of that happened. We have the video to show all of it. It just simply didn't happen. And so 3 days later, I get a knock at my door. There's 5 police officers, and the guy's delivering a paper arrest for misdemeanor 3 trespassing. So if we had actually done what the media said and what the school and the principal, Diane Vargo, claimed we did, I would be served a felony. I would be taken into custody. I wasn't. Misdemeanor 3 trespassing is literally a step below loitering. It's like between a parking ticket and loitering. But 5 officers, really? We found out later they put 15 officers investigating my case. The FBI was watching me. It's absolutely ludicrous. Like, we have people committing crimes, rape, theft, murder, and they're going to send, the short-staffed Tucson police are going to send 5 officers out to me and then assign a 15. And the other 2 dads got.
And it's not even legitimate either. To be trespassed off public property, you have to be in commission of a crime. They can't just tell you to leave.
Well, and what the Arizona revised statute says is if a reasonable request to leave is made. And my argument was, it's not reasonable to say, leave, we're not going to give you any answers, leave, or we're going to trespass you. It's reasonable.
Not reasonable. That's what you do that's what you do to somebody that's a threat. I didn't communicate to you that I was a threat to you, and you should have not felt that way. And if you think this much controversy is a threat, you're not safe to be leading children in any kind of capacity.
No,
and that's what I was saying. Like, they are literally abusing a child, but you guys are the ones threat that they're coming after.
Yeah, and then they, you'd think public servants who are paid by tax dollars wouldn't just run out to the media. They'd go to the court first and let the trial happen. But no, they went out and weaved a completely false story. And then they started stacking on charges. I got 3 more misdemeanors, one of which was interfering with the learning environment. And yet we had a copy of an email that John Caruth, the school superintendent, sent out the next day to all the staff. One of the staff members sent it to me, and he said the learning environment wasn't disrupted and the situation was resolved peacefully. And yet he sat there in court months later and said, denied that, well, maybe that I wrote that, maybe it is, but it's on a social media post, so who knows? He knew he did it. He knew he wrote it. And so I literally got charged and convicted for 4 misdemeanors. And they treated it like I was a felon, but they knew they couldn't get away with trying to charge me for felons. But the whole time, even in the scheduling hearings leading up to it, they called me the criminal and they called the plaintiffs the victim, which in itself is probably grounds for a mistrial. But I got convicted of 4 misdemeanors. And let me tell you the difference, because I had a platform and a voice. I arguably did less than the other two fathers. One of them got a plea deal and got off with a $250 fine. The other one got just a fine. I got sentenced to 100 days in jail and almost $10,000 in fines. And the prosecutor wanted to put me in jail for 6 months for talking. And it was such a kangaroo court of a trial by a magistrate who, by the way, when she was up for reappointment, the magistrate commission unanimously recommended against her. They said she doesn't offer due process, she's volatile, and she doesn't have a basic understanding of the law. That's the judge I got.
So what happened?
So they what was supposed to be a half day trial stretched out to 2, and then another day for sentencing, and they sentenced me to jail time and a huge fine. The day after that, we appealed it. The day after that, we appealed it. And the prosecutor sent a document to the wrong place. And so we didn't get our appeal in time because of that. And they tried to squash the appeal, but we got it through anyway. So, so these other two dads were let off basically scot-free, but I was sentenced to jail time because they want to make an example of me. And I mean, the trial was a joke. And let me say this, even before.
So what happened? Did you end up going to jail?
No, let me back up for a minute though, because before these criminal trials, there was a hearing for the dad whose kid was at the school because they had pulled protective orders out on him. So Judge Antonio Riojas watched the video, and his assessment was, he said, you guys didn't do anything hostile. You didn't raise your voice. You didn't take a step toward anyone. All you did was disagree with them. And he turned to the principal and the superintendent of schools and all their staff and said, they get to disagree with you, and you don't have the right to tell them how to disagree with you. I'm dismissing the orders. And yet this judge convicted me at this time. So no, I haven't been to jail, and no, I'm not going to go to jail because it was unjust and wrong. We're appealing it, but we have to somehow raise $15,000 for the appeal. And I mean, all of this because I spoke out for someone. So even if we win, I'm still out the $15,000. We moved, and we're wanting to rent before when we sold our house, we were wanting to rent before we bought again. We were turned down on a rental application because I'm supposedly a criminal. Well, we thought it was because of the second arrest. It was actually the first arrest that was dismissed. I mean, I'm getting a record, and I've never been violent, never done anything.
Right.
So
yeah, that's the thing, is it's weaponized. It's weaponizing the justice system against people that, you know, are aware of what freedom should be like, and trying to hold to account the people that are supposed to be our public servants. Oh, what an upside down system that we've got here, man. Well, it's good that you're getting something done about it. It's good that we're talking about it and that we're kind of getting the message out there. There's a lot of people that went through this. Ian Smith, you know, that was his Patriot Barbie, her salon. Yeah. You know, there's lots of different people out there that have kind of been through very similar things. And so, Kelly, what are you rallying everybody around that's had this happen to get legal defense and all that stuff? Why don't you plug that?
Well, I know you've talked to Lindsey Graham, Patriot Barbie, and probably Ian Smith. They're both good friends. We've been through similar things. So I have a Give, Send, Go site. We're always hesitant to ask for help, but here's why I'm going ahead and doing the Give, Send, Go site, because I'm going to use what we went through to help a lot of people. There was a mom in Sahuarita, Arizona, which was a little south of us, who simply wanted the same kind of documentation on why her child was being quarantined. They ended up arresting the mom and the dad and the 16-year-old daughter. They handcuffed all of them and shoved them in police cars, even the teen girl. And then they got her in court, and they said, we want to make an example of you. So they sentenced her to 5 days in prison. And she went, and I was there when she was going into the prison. I was there to support her, and I did a little video. But it was a harrowing experience for her. She was a school mom with no record, children's book author, and she's in with drug addicts and murderers for 5 days. And for what? Because she wanted answers as to why they were denying her child an education. So I've been talking to different congressmen. I've been talking to people who run groups like Moms for Liberty. I just sent out to some congressmen a letter where I want to get these people in front of the House committee and the special subcommittee on the weaponization of the federal government. And there was an interim report that this committee did this subcommittee did about the inappropriateness of Christopher Wray devoting terrorist, counter-terrorist resources, directing that toward parents.
Right.
And they said this was wrong. You did not have the right to do this. And not only that, you created an environment of fear and suspicion about parents by doing this. And so part of my letter is I want to get these people to testify so Congress can hear this. But another part of the letter is we need to retroactively dismiss all of those arrests. We need to give amnesty to those parents because the foundation was built upon was invalid. It was, again, the weaponization of our own government against people who had valid concerns. And I think some people need compensation. I think that mom from Sahuarita, she ended up moving her family to another state because of all this. I think they need to be compensated by the government that persecuted them. Absolutely. And look, these people weren't, look, why would I go in and attack a teacher or a principal? I would never do that. I've been a teacher myself. I was a volunteer teacher in Sri Lanka for a year, half a lifetime ago. There's no reason why parents would be militant. It's simply politics. They don't want to be exposed for taking money to harm kids. They don't want CRT challenge, these ideologies, and they want to demonize parents. And Congress needs to do something about it. A lot of people need to keep speaking out. We cannot let them get away with these things. So I'm using my case and my situation because I've made promises to a lot of people to help them. They came to me and said, Kelly, we need help. So I've already been to DC twice. I'm going to go back again. And I'm in touch. I'm in conversation with a lot of congressmen, and we're going to take this on. And these people are going to be held responsible.
Is that what the Give, Send, Go is for? Is for that fund for what you're talking about now, or what?
Well, I mean, I set it at $30,000, and part of it is to pay for legal funds, and we expect more than the 15. But also for travel accommodations, some of the expenses of traveling and taking this on. So, you know, if we make even a couple $1,000s, anything anybody wants to do, if they want to get $5, we're happy for that. I mean, every bit helps, and we'll get it done. We'll figure it out. But right now we're renting and we're trying to buy a new home for our family, and the escrow agent is holding that almost $10,000 because there's a judgment on our house that is illegal, by the way, because there's a Homestead Act that says unless you make a certain amount on your home sale, which we didn't make that much, they can't have it, and yet they're still holding it. So the school district, to cover their tracks, would literally throw
friggin' tyrants,
a concerned parent in jail, and deprive their family of $10,000. And for what? What harm did we do? None.
Right. You resisted, and now we're proven correct about almost everything that we all thought the whole time. Yeah. And what's interesting is that they are doing this in more than just that place, too. Even the school board locally out here, they'll make it so that they can't even do comments from the parents until the end of the thing, and they make the end of the thing like 11:30 p.m. So nobody shows up to talk because you have to sit for 3 hours first for them to talk about whatever. So they know you're going to be tired and bored at the end and you're not going to stick around and say anything to them. They were just so sneaky. They even did like where parents could sit. They'd have like roped out sections to avoid this influx of parents being pissed about stuff. And it's just like, dude, if you guys remove the veil, then the only veil we're going to have is like when we're really pissed about something, and that's just not good. It's the same thing with the left and the right. When they've removed all the dialogue abilities from all of us and we're not allowed to talk anymore because I'm a racist if I think that maybe reparations is a bad idea or that I think white people aren't evil. Like when you have that as your core, the only thing that's left, since you've taken away talking because you don't want to give a platform to bigotry, which is any of our opinions on our entire side, what's going to happen is the two sides splits, and the only time they meet back up is for battle. You know what I mean? Because they're not going to talk about stuff.
People need to get back to the humanity of this because look, the stats are out there. The suicide rates elevated. It's so obvious now that some people who push this stuff are now trying to deny it. But you know, we need to drop political affiliations and just say, look, mistakes were made, whether intentional or not. But I'll tell you,
And let's not even call it political. Just, hey, this is a bad precedent for anybody to have as far as like, maybe you trust the government right now, so you're willing to hand them the keys to everything. But fast forward 10 years when the person that you might randomly, subjectively decide to trust, like Fauci or something right now, maybe that person to you looks like a person who's maybe legit. And so you trust Fauci. That's fine. Yeah. But you're giving him permanent keys and he's giving that role to somebody else that you might not trust later on. The whole point is the government shouldn't have this much authority to begin with because they're not trustworthy. That's that's the story of all of history, we're not even that. It's not even so much that we're hardcore conservative. It's that we're not stupid. You know what I mean? It's like so I'm not even saying our side, because anybody that used to be, look at Bill Maher. Like these people are not hardcore conservative. Joe Rogan, Tim Pool. These people are not hardcore conservative. They're just not stupid.
Look, when the death rate for children is 0, but the suicide rate is rising. Like somebody told me, if you're riding a dead horse, the best strategy is to dismount. You got to change your approach.
Right.
Because we had the numbers. We knew this wasn't killing children. We knew, in fact, that some people are going to take exception to this, but people needed to get it. You can't escape a virus. Eventually you're going to get it. The kids needed to get it. Builds up their immune systems. They're more robust. But I'll tell you, the just insanity of my so-called trial. I sat there and my lawyer asked on cross-examination, asked the school, did Mr. Walker raise his voice? No. Did Mr. Walker take a threatening step to you? No. Did he threaten to arrest anyone? No. And then the prosecutor got up and he said, did you feel like Mr. Walker could have been violent? Did you feel like he could have done this or that? And by the way, they never locked down the school. They never alerted parents something was going on. It was a parental meeting, and they contrived it later to be as if some crimes were committed. So I was sentenced to 100 days in jail, $10,000 taken away from my family for a Minority Report kind of thing. Do you think he could have done this? You don't convict people based on hypotheticals. That's not even to the level of suspicion or probable suspicion or probable cause. And by the way, the officer who delivered me this ticket, he hadn't seen the video. He had no idea what was going on. I said, what's your probable cause? He had none. And in the end, I just said, well, you need to have a probable cause. In the end, he said, and I have this on video too, look, you're going to sign that ticket or I'm going to take you to jail. Now, that isn't how police are supposed to work. You're supposed to say, I witnessed you committing a crime, or I have probable cause, or at least a reasonable suspicion.
Or here's a warrant with the proof or whatever.
He didn't know what the hell he was there for. He was just following orders. And I gave him a speech. I said, look, you're just following orders. This is exactly what the Nazi officer said in Nuremberg. And I said, you swore an oath to the Constitution. And I gave him a lecture. But, you know.
Through the door, or was he arresting you at that point?
No, I was outside out front of my house. And there was never any handcuffing, no frisking, nothing like that. He was just delivering a paper arrest, they call it. But I didn't want to accept it if he didn't know why he was doing it. Right. And I said, why are there 5 police officers here? Oh, well, it's a training exercise. Mm-hmm. Sure. So.
And a photo op, probably.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where's CNN? You guys in the trees? They tell you 3 hours before this? You know, like.
Perfect media, just op.
Seriously.
So one of the things they said in court, the judge said, I'm not to speak about this and I'm to scrub my social media of all this stuff. And I turned to my lawyer afterwards and I said, they don't have the right to do that. He said, no, you have the First Amendment. So they don't want me talking about it. I'm going to talk about it even more.
Yeah.
You want to shut me up? Tell me to be quiet. Then I'm going to talk even more.
Yeah, I think these tyrannical people don't realize the burn that's still in a lot of us, that like we start off defiant. And then we like allowed you guys to lead the country because we were under the suspicion that you were doing it for the right reasons. Well, so we have one more category we wanted to talk about. Kelly, do you want to stick around for this? We're going to talk about this gay parade that was going to happen, and then we're going to have a close here.
Oh, yeah. I have some good things to say about that.
The stress is warranted about what you're thinking about them, but I want you guys to see what else that same family-friendly parade was doing later on or somewhere near it. So there was a pride parade where essentially they're completely nude, and it was family-friendly, quote unquote, right? Where there's guys just ding-dongs out, 100% ding-dongs out, kids there too. And then we get this guy at the end of the parade. I mean, it's already bad because it's full-blown, you know, whatever, but like, look at this guy.
Oh, hell yeah.
He just slowly gyrates his nasty goods from whitey-tighty, probably shit-stained underwear. Like, what the hell? Like, we are at the stage where this dude, he probably gets off, you know, freaking he's getting off the couch in his trailer, drinks a couple Bud Lights, goes out, sees a bunch of dudes mooning and flashing kids and goes, this is usually a crime. I guess today it's not. I've been excited to do this for a while. Goes out and just shows his whitey-tighty like bulge to all these kids and just rotates it. And these parents, these dumbasses brought their kids there, bro. This is I'm so far past tolerant at this point. I think you're depraved. I think you're sick. I think you guys need more than help, and you're not going to get any from me anymore. I'm not on the team of being cool with tolerance anymore. No, I actually think you're sick. I don't want anything to do with the culture that you guys are representing. LGBTQ deuces, not about it.
We don't need 87,000 IRS agents. We need 87,000 CPS agents for California and New York.
Yeah, if the CPS agents were actually just and they weren't part of the sex trafficking system themselves. But I know what you mean, and yeah, you're right. I mean, this is ridiculous. Like, oh my gosh, like I'm just horrified at the fact that people are taking their children. I mean, there's kids that are just like watching him, and they're like 7, 8, and they're just kind of looking at him like, this is confusing. Like, you can tell there's weird shit happening in their brains as they're seeing it. Like, you're just like,
well, now they're gonna be messed up from it.
Yeah, like this is weird.
Like, this is the beginning of them realizing something's wrong, but they're being told it's normal.
Now, what happens if their stepdad or their uncle or somebody does this in private, you know, at the Christmas party or something? They're not going to, even more so, you know, this is our secret. They're not going to know that it's inappropriate because they've seen this on the street.
Right. They're normalizing abhorrent behavior. And so kids are going to be so confused, and they're going to wind up so hurt from it.
Seriously. I mean, it's a matter like it's not neutral. You can't show children sexual content and expect for it to not have an effect on them. It does, and it has a permanent effect in some cases. If you look at people, you know, there's a lot of information about pornography and what it does to your brain in a negative way. Well, that's because sexual content does something to your brain in a negative way, even unassociated with pornography. And there's a lot of studies that go over kind of the trauma that children have when they look at porn too early in their life, or I would say almost probably at all, you know, where you're just going to be in a permanent state of like, once the door's opened, it's there. And these people are just throwing their kids into the door of God knows what. And then their teachers are telling them at frickin' school, here's the videos to watch how to do anal yourself, you know, and stuff like that. And it's like, this is sick shit, dude.
Kids petting men in bondage outfits that have dog heads on them. Like, what are you teaching that kid? What's going to be burned into that kid's brain?
Right. That one guy had a sexual fetish where he liked to be like a dog, and I petted him. I wonder if he became more aroused as your 6-year-old scratched his chin, you dumb fuck. You know what I mean? Like, what are you thinking? And then the only answer to that is, well, it's okay to sexualize children some. That's the only answer you could say to me. And that's what they actually say to me when I argue with them. That's where it goes, well, in France and all that, they expose kids to sexual content way earlier, and I think ours is weird.
When I was probably about 5 and my older sister was 6, I remember being in a grocery store, and I remember the store manager and my dad trying to find this guy, and it turns out this guy had shown my sister a doll, but it was his penis, and they tried to find him. But now they're getting to do this right in the street. I mean, this guy would have been arrested and jailed.
Yeah, that was that parade. The guy had whitey tighties on. I'm saying before the whitey tighties guys got there, all of the men were naked entirely.
This guy, flipped up a skirt and bodily fluids.
Oh.
Did you see that one?
No.
Oh, it is forever burned into me, and I cannot imagine that being burned into my children.
Yeah, it's so sick, dude.
And there were children right there when it happened, and it just...
How do we even talk to our children about this? I never would have imagined I would be having a conversation. Can boys become girls? Can girls become boys? Like, I don't even want these ideas in their heads.
Yeah, because it's just, I mean, you're talking about how you're going to undo that amount of work mentally. Like, you're not going to be able to just say, this isn't a big deal, you know, don't worry about it. Your kid is going to forever be like, well, can a person actually, you know, be another gender or not? And they're going to think the answer is yes. And then we're all screwed because now your kids are stupid too. This is whole new levels of depraved, man. And if you can't see it now, I don't think you're gonna. Like that scene for me did it. Like obviously when the kid was petting the dogs, I made posts about that a long time ago. The people that are acting like dogs, it's like you know, this is obviously over the line. But like if that didn't wake you up, random white guy that seems like he would probably be a pedo in other scenarios is showing up and slowly staring your kids in the eyes, bending over and shaking his Johnson. Like, what is happening, bro? Like, this is an arrestable offense in almost every state 5 years ago. Now it's not? Like, what is this? You know what I'm saying? Like,
because
this is...
you throw up a colorful flag, suddenly anything's
legal. Well, Kelly, you want to say anything else before we dip out?
Yeah, sure. I just, you know, people sometimes want to keep their head low and just avoid these things and maybe let other people deal with it. I'll tell you, this isn't just politics as usual. This is our way of life, our worldview under direct attack. It is all Marxist theory. And you might feel like, what can I do? Well, what you can do is stand up and speak out and not allow these people to shame you, because everybody who speaks, everybody who stands up, everybody who confronts this makes a difference. I went from being a nobody coffee shop owner to actually having a voice and helping a lot of people. And we need everybody in the fight. You can't be a Christian and say, oh, I'm not going to be involved, because you have a responsibility to stand up to evil.
Yeah, and that's, I think, something that a lot of believers need to kind of step into is like, if you don't say something, this will get worse.
Absolutely.
It will get worse. And like, you have a responsibility. Yeah, we're here because of it. You have a responsibility as a believer to limit the amount of actual trauma that gets inflicted on people, period. You know what I mean? And with tyrannical governments, significantly more trauma happens. So that's the argument. Kelly, it was good having you on, bro. Appreciate it, man. It was fun.
Yeah, great being here. Thanks for having me. Gina, nice to meet you.
It was nice to meet you.